Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room hummed with low voices, chairs scraping, papers shuffled, boots planted in a rhythm that sounded like certainty. She sat at the far end, smaller than most, her uniform crisp but her presence barely acknowledged. A map was spread across the table, lines and circles drawn over terrain that looked jagged, unforgiving. She studied every inch, her eyes catching details the others overlooked. But when she leaned forward, when she cleared her throat to offer a thought, the captain's voice rolled over hers like thunder. It wasn't the first time. She kept still, fingers brushing the edge of her notebook. Small hands, they always said, too small to carry the weight of a rifle, too small to drag a comrade if things went bad, too small to matter in the chaos of war. No one said it outright anymore, not here, not when the stakes were this high. But she felt it in the way their gazes skimmed past her, as if her presence were a mistake they couldn't correct. She pressed her lips together, a muscle in her jaw tightening. Let them think that. She had learned long ago that silence carried its own kind of power, and besides, there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. The operation was simple in theory: go in, extract intel, get out before nightfall. But simple was a word reserved for textbooks, not for dirt and fire and the echoes of bullets snapping the air. She had been on enough missions to know that nothing unfolded as neatly as the maps suggested. As the captain laid out assignments, she listened, memorizing every detail. Her name was last, as usual, paired with a soldier she barely knew. A tall one, all shoulders and scars, the kind of man who seemed built for this life. He didn't even glance at her when his name met hers. She caught a flicker of irritation cross his face, as though carrying her along would slow him down. Her chest tightened, but she let it pass. She would prove herself not with words but with actions. She had always done it that way. When the meeting ended, boots thundered toward the exit. She lingered a moment, tracing a finger across the map's red circle. That point. That was where everything would change. She felt it, though she couldn't explain why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was memory. Outside, the sun glared across the base, bleaching the tents and vehicles in harsh light. Dust swirled at her feet as the convoy lined up. Engines coughed, rotors churned the air. She climbed into the back of the transport, the smell of fuel mixing with sweat and canvas. The soldier assigned to her sat opposite, his arms folded, eyes fixed on the horizon. She wanted to speak, to bridge the distance. But what would she say? That she was nervous, that she carried a photo in her pocket of someone she could never disappoint? No, she stayed silent. She had learned the weight of silence. The ride out was rough, jolting over uneven terrain. She braced herself, one hand gripping the metal frame. The others joked, swapping fragments of stories about home, about food, about the absurdity of war. Their laughter rose and fell like the crackle of a fire. She listened, absorbing their humanity. They weren't just soldiers, they were sons, brothers, fathers. One of them tapped a wedding band against his rifle, a nervous habit. Another rubbed a small charm he kept tucked under his collar. She envied their ease. She never spoke about home, not anymore. When the vehicle stopped, silence fell heavy. The kind that makes your heartbeat sound too loud. They dismounted quickly, weapons up, scanning the ridgelines. The air smelled of heat and stone, sharp and dry. Somewhere, a bird shrieked before vanishing into the distance. Her partner muttered, "Stay close, don't slow me down." The words stung, sharper than the dry air in her lungs. She nodded anyway. The team split, moving with precision into the narrow pass. Shadows stretched long across the rocks, hiding more than they revealed. Every footstep seemed to echo, though they tried to make none. She felt the strap of her pack digging into her shoulder, heavier than it should have been. Half an hour in, they found the outpost, half buried, abandoned, silent, too silent. The captain signaled, hands cutting through the air, "Move in quick, clean." She crouched low, heart hammering, scanning broken walls and empty windows. Her breath caught when she saw it, a boot print, fresh, pressed into the dirt. She opened her mouth to warn the others. The first shot cracked the silence wide open. Chaos erupted. Shouts, gunfire, the sharp ping of bullets tearing against stone. Dust exploded around them, stinging eyes, choking throats. She pressed flat against the wall, ears ringing, the taste of metal on her tongue. Her partner returned fire, roaring something she couldn't make out. She forced herself to move, to breathe, to act. Training kicked in, but fear pulsed beneath it, raw and undeniable. She fired, steady, controlled, the recoil jarring her shoulder. A figure fell. Another rose. It was a blur of motion, noise, and fragments of sky. And then screams. Her eyes darted across the courtyard. One of their own was down, not dead. She could see the rise and fall of his chest, but hit badly. Blood stained his uniform, pooling beneath him, spreading too fast. She froze. The world narrowed to that single sight. The wounded soldier gasping, eyes wide with terror. Her partner shouted at her, voice hoarse, angry. "Don't just stand there, cover fire." But something in her broke loose, something old, something rooted deep in memory. She saw not the man before her, but another face, another uniform, another time she had been too late. Her rifle slipped from her shoulder, clattering against stone. She ran. Bullets sliced the air, dust choking her lungs. She dropped low, skidding beside him. His eyes met hers, wild with pain and disbelief. He whispered something, maybe a plea, maybe just his own name, but she didn't stop to listen. Her hands, those small hands they had doubted, slid under his arms. He was heavy, dead weight, blood soaking through her sleeves. Muscles screamed, back burning, but she lifted. She carried. The world blurred around her, shouts, gunfire, explosions of dirt. Every step was agony, every breath fire. But she moved. She moved because she had to. Her partner's voice cut through the chaos, half fury, half awe. "She's dragging him back alone." She didn't hear the rest. She couldn't. All she knew was the weight pressing against her, the blood warm against her skin, the pounding of her heart refusing to stop. The distance stretched forever. 10 meters felt like miles. She stumbled, knees striking stone, but she refused to fall. She thought of the photo in her pocket. She thought of promises whispered to someone who would never know if she failed now. And then cover. Hands grabbed the wounded man, pulling him from her grip. Medics shouted, working fast, their voices sharp and urgent. She collapsed against the wall, chest heaving, vision swimming. Dust clung to her hair, her face, her lashes. The firefight still raged beyond, but in that moment all she could hear was the ragged breath of the man she had dragged back. Alive, still alive. Her partner stared at her, eyes wide, disbelief etched into every line of his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came. For once, silence belonged to him. She closed her eyes just for a second, letting the weight of everything crash over her. The fear, the pain, the memory that had driven her to move when logic said she couldn't. She felt small, broken, exhausted, and yet proud. She had carried him, and no one could take that from her. Why did the firefight sound farther away, and yet closer at the same time? She blinked hard, trying to clear the dust stinging her eyes. The medics were shouting over the wounded soldier, their hands slick, their voices clipped, urgent. Beyond them, bursts of gunfire rattled off the canyon walls, each shot bouncing like thunder through her skull. She pressed her back to the wall, her chest heaving. Her small hands still shook, blood smeared across her palms. Her arms trembled with the echo of the weight she had carried. She tried to steady them, but the tremor wouldn't stop. Her partner crouched a few feet away, rifle steady, jaw clenched. His eyes flicked to her just for a moment. Not the same look as before. No dismissal this time, something else. Confusion, maybe respect, maybe both. But then his voice cut sharp. "We're not done here, keep it together." She swallowed hard, nodded once, forcing herself upright. Her legs felt weak, but she steadied her rifle again, metal cool against her cheek. She scanned the ridges, the shattered windows, every shadow that seemed to breathe. They were pinned. Whoever had laid the trap knew the terrain better, had the high ground. Retreat wasn't simple. The captain's voice barked orders through the comms, words clipped tight with strain. Hold your sectors. Reinforcements inbound. Don't break line. Reinforcements. She knew what that meant. Minutes, maybe more. Minutes they didn't have. Another volley erupted. A soldier near her cursed, clutching his arm, dragged back by another before a medic could reach him. The air smelled of gunpowder and copper, the taste of it thick on her tongue. She tried to breathe steady, one breath in, one breath out, but her mind was already slipping elsewhere unbidden. She saw her brother's face. The memory tore through her like shrapnel, his laugh easy and loud, his uniform too big for him at first. The day he'd left, telling her she was too small to follow. She'd smiled anyway, hiding the hurt. And later, much later, the folded flag. The silence of the house that used to carry his voice. She blinked hard, wrenching herself back to the present. This wasn't the time, not here. But it was why she had moved. Why she had carried the soldier through fire and dirt and agony. Why she couldn't let another brother fall when she still had strength left. Her partner fired a short burst, ducked, reloaded. He muttered low, half to himself, "They're not backing off." His eyes flicked to her again. "You good?" The question startled her, not the words but the tone, less harsh, real. She nodded once, "I'm good." He almost smiled, just a twitch of his mouth. Then another burst of fire snapped them back. Minutes stretched. Sweat trickled down her neck. Her shoulder ached from recoil. She kept firing, moving, breathing through the fear that wanted to take hold. Then a pause. Not silence, not yet, but a thinning. A gap between bursts, a breath in the chaos. The captain seized it. "Fall back, north wall, regroup." They moved fast, dragging the wounded, covering each other step by step. She and her partner fell into rhythm. He laid fire, she shifted, then she covered as he moved. The rhythm of survival. Her pack bit into her shoulders. Her lungs burned. But step by step they reached the wall, regrouped with the others. Medics huddled over the injured, radios crackled, tension buzzed like static in the air. The captain crouched low, his face streaked with dirt. His eyes swept the group, counting, calculating. They had taken hits, too many, and reinforcements were still minutes out. Her partner leaned close, muttering so only she could hear, "We're exposed. They'll flank if we sit here." He was right. She saw it too, the way the rocks curved, the way the shadows stretched. She wanted to speak, to tell the captain, but the old hesitation clawed at her. Would he listen? Would anyone? Her jaw tightened. This was the moment. She couldn't stay silent, not this time. She leaned in, voice steady but low. "They'll push from the ridge, south side. It's the blind spot." The captain glanced at her just for a second. His eyes flicked to the terrain, then back. He didn't argue, he just nodded. "Cover the south, now." Her partner moved with her, no hesitation this time. They scrambled to position, dirt sliding under their boots, rifles ready. The attack came seconds later, just as she had said. Figures moving fast, rifles flashing. But this time they were ready. She fired clean, precise, each shot steady. Her partner cursed under his breath, but it wasn't anger, it was something like awe. Together they held the line. By the time reinforcements arrived, the enemy had melted back into the rocks, shadows fading with the sun. The team pulled out fast, carrying their wounded, leaving only silence behind. In the transport back, no one spoke much. Exhaustion hung heavy, heavier than the dust. The wounded soldier she had carried still breathed, though shallow, his face pale. Medics stayed bent over him the whole ride. She sat against the side, rifle across her lap, hands raw, arms aching. She stared at her palms, at the blood still crusted there. Not all of it his. Some of it hers, from skin split open under strain. Her partner sat across, eyes on her again. Finally he spoke. "You carried him alone." The words were simple, but they landed heavy. She didn't answer. What was there to say? She just looked out the flap where the horizon burned red with sunset. But inside she felt something shift. Not triumph, not pride, something quieter. The faintest release of the weight she had carried since her brother. Still she knew this wasn't over. Because there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. Why was the base so quiet when they returned? Engines roared as the convoy rolled through the gates, but the silence waiting inside was heavier than the sound. Soldiers stood still, watching as stretchers were lifted, medics rushing into the glow of the infirmary. No cheers for survival, no relief, just the weight of what had almost been lost. She stepped down from the transport last, boots hitting the hard ground. Dust clung to her skin, blood stiffened her sleeves, her arms still ached with the phantom pull of weight. She lingered near the vehicle, watching as the wounded soldier she had carried disappeared behind metal doors. His face had gone slack, pale as ash. Alive, yes, but fragile, a thread pulled too thin. Her partner passed by, shoulders tight, rifle slung low. He didn't speak, just met her eyes briefly, then nodded once, like an unspoken acknowledgement before vanishing into the blur of bodies. For a moment she stood alone, again. The debrief came quickly, crammed into a tent with stale air and harsh light. The captain's voice cut sharp, demanding reports, details, explanations. She sat in silence at first, listening as others spoke. The ambush, the losses, the ground they barely held. She could feel her chest tighten, pulse rising because she knew what was coming. When the captain's eyes finally landed on her, it was like a spotlight. "And you, what happened back there?" She swallowed hard. Everyone was watching. She could feel their eyes weighing her, doubting still. "I saw him go down," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "There wasn't time, I moved." The captain's expression didn't change. "You abandoned position." The words hit like a blade. Her jaw clenched. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, to remind him the man was alive because of her. But the silence in the tent pressed heavy, every soldier waiting to see if she would break. Before she could speak, her partner cut in. She carried him, alone, through fire, saved his life. Every head turned, the weight shifted. The captain's eyes flicked between them, unreadable. Finally, he gave a short nod. Noted. And then, as if nothing had happened, he moved on. Relief washed through her, but it was tangled with something else. Bitterness, maybe. Because even now, even after everything, it was his word that carried weight, not hers. When the debrief ended, soldiers filtered out in silence, some stopping to clasp her shoulder briefly, others avoiding her entirely. She stepped into the night air, cool and sharp, and let her lungs fill again. The sky above was vast, scattered with stars, the kind of sky that always reminded her of home. She tilted her head back, remembering nights on the roof with her brother, tracing constellations neither of them could name. He'd point and laugh, making up stories about warriors and wolves and giants. She had believed every word. Now the sky only pressed heavy, a reminder of everything lost. She walked the perimeter of the base alone, boots crunching gravel until the noise of the camp faded. The silence out here felt different, less heavy, more honest. She pulled a photo from her pocket, worn edges, creased from years of being folded and unfolded. Her brother, smiling in uniform, arms slung around her shoulders. He had always looked so certain, so sure. She whispered to the photo, though no sound came. She didn't need words. A voice broke the quiet. "You don't sleep much, do you?" She turned, startled. Her partner stood a few feet away, arms folded, eyes softer than before. She tucked the photo away quickly. "Neither do you." He almost smiled, fair. For a moment neither spoke. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of fuel and dust. Finally he said, "Back there, you didn't hesitate." She looked down at her hands, still raw, faint tremors running through them. "I did," she admitted. "Inside, I just didn't let it show." He studied her like he was seeing something for the first time. "You've done that before." Her chest tightened. The memory surged again, Her brother, the day he hadn't come back, the helplessness that had gutted her. She forced herself to breathe. I couldn't let it happen again. He didn't ask more. Maybe he understood. Maybe he had his own ghosts. After a long silence, he said, "They don't see it yet, but I do. You're stronger than they think." The words lingered. She wanted to believe them, but doubt ran deep. Still, something in her chest eased, just a little. When she finally returned to her bunk, sleep didn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the courtyard, the blood, the weight of the soldier in her arms. She saw her brother, too, fading in and out of the same memory. By dawn, exhaustion pressed heavy, but duty called. Training drills, equipment checks, the rhythm of a base that never truly slept. She moved through it quietly, unnoticed again. But whispers followed her now. Snippets of what she had done. Disbelief, curiosity, maybe even respect. Still, she stayed silent. Words had never been her weapon. Actions spoke louder. But as the day stretched on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered from the mission. Something left unfinished. The ambush hadn't been random. She had seen it in the precision, the timing. Someone had known they were coming. And though no one said it aloud, she could see the same thought flicker across her partner's face when their eyes met across the yard. There was more to this, more than the map, the orders, the mission. Something she hadn't told them, not yet. Why was the air inside the base heavier than the dust outside? At first, she thought it was just exhaustion, the kind that seeps into bones after too many hours awake, too many ghosts whispering when the lights go out. But as she moved through the compound, from mess hall to armory to the yard where soldiers drilled, she felt it. A tension. A quiet shift in the way people spoke, the way they looked over shoulders, the way silence fell too quickly when certain words lingered. Something had cracked after that mission, and it wasn't just the wall of trust between her and the others. It was deeper. She heard fragments in passing, voices low, clipped. They knew we were coming. Couldn't have been chance. Someone tipped them off. The word no one said aloud pressed heavy between every line. Betrayal. She kept her head down, but she listened, always listening. In the armory, she stripped her rifle piece by piece, hands steady though her stomach churned. Her partner entered without a word, set his weapon down across from her, and began the same routine. For a moment, only the sound of metal on metal filled the space. Then quietly he said, "You've noticed it too." She didn't look up. Noticed what? The way everyone's on edge, the questions. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. That ambush wasn't luck. Someone fed them. Her throat tightened. She had felt it, known it. Hearing him say it out loud only confirmed the fear clawing at her chest. He studied her face, searching. "You're not surprised." She set down a bolt, finally meeting his eyes. They were sharp, probing, like he wanted to pull something out of her. She forced her voice even. "I've seen it before. Plans too precise. Routes too exposed." He tilted his head, as though he could see the weight she carried. "And yet you haven't told anyone." She looked away, hands tightening on cold steel. He didn't know, couldn't know, that she had reasons to stay silent. That silence had been her armor, her only way to survive the doubts already stacked against her. He didn't press, not then. Just finished his rifle, wiped his hands, and muttered, "Keep your eyes open. Something coming." When he left, the room felt colder. That night she couldn't eat. The mess hall buzzed with voices, laughter forced, conversations short. She carried her tray to a corner, picking at food she couldn't taste. Her partner sat at another table, surrounded by men who laughed too loud, trying to drown out the unease. He didn't join their laughter. His eyes flicked to her once, a silent tether in the noise. And still, she felt apart, separate, too small at the briefing table, too quiet in the noise of men who spoke like they owned the ground they stood on. She left early, slipping into the night air. The sky was dark, clouds blotting out the stars. The silence of the compound pressed heavy, broken only by the distant hum of generators. She walked to the edge of the fence line where shadows stretched long. There she pulled the photo from her pocket again, her brother, his arms slung around her, smile wide and careless. She touched the worn edge with her thumb. She had promised him, years ago, she would never stop fighting. Not after what happened. Not after the day the folded flag came home and silence swallowed their house. She had promised him she would find a way to carry more than her size ever suggested she could. But promises had weight, and tonight she felt it crushing her. She didn't hear footsteps until he spoke. "You're always out here." She turned sharply. Her partner stood just beyond the floodlight, half in shadow. "You follow me?" she asked, sharper than intended. He shrugged, noticed the pattern, thought maybe you could use company. For a moment she wanted to send him away, to guard her silence like a shield, but the words slipped out instead. "I don't sleep much." He stepped closer, leaning against the fence beside her. "Me neither." The silence between them stretched, not uncomfortable, heavy but shared. Finally he asked, "That photo you carry, who is it?" Her chest tightened. She hadn't shown anyone, not here, not in years, but something in his voice, low, careful, broke the wall she'd built. "My brother," she said softly. He waited. "He was a soldier too, bigger than me, stronger. Everyone said he'd make it home, everyone." Her throat burned. She blinked hard, keeping the tears from spilling. "He didn't." The words hung in the night, brittle and raw. Her partner didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. "I had a friend, same story. You never really stop hearing their voice." She nodded. "That's why I carried him back there. I saw my brother when I looked at him. I couldn't let it happen again." The confession left her chest aching, but lighter too, as if the weight had shifted, if only a little. Her partner turned, eyes steady on her. "Then don't doubt yourself. You did what most of us couldn't." She wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered, rooted too deep. Before she could answer, the radio crackled across the compound, breaking the stillness. Urgent voices, orders cutting through the dark. She stiffened. Something was happening. Her partner straightened too, eyes sharp. "That's not routine." They both ran, boots pounding gravel, heading for the command tent. Inside, the air was thick, officers bent over maps, radios alive with static and shouts. The captain's face was hard, eyes flashing. Another ambush, another patrol hit, too close to base this time. She felt her stomach drop. This wasn't random, this wasn't chance. Her partner caught her eye across the room, the truth unspoken but clear. Someone was feeding them. And as orders flew, as men scrambled for weapons, as the camp shook with the urgency of a threat closing in, she felt the photo in her pocket, warm against her palm. She knew, with a certainty that made her bones ache, that the real battle wasn't out there. It was inside. And there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. Why did the captain look at her just a second too long when he gave the new orders? The room had been chaos a heartbeat ago, maps slapped down, radios spitting static, men rushing to gear up for a fight that hadn't even fully arrived yet. But in the middle of it, his gaze had snagged on her. Brief, sharp, like a question he didn't voice. She felt it linger as she stood among the others, small in the press of shoulders and weapons and adrenaline. She felt it like a spotlight on her back as assignments were rattled off. And when her name came, paired again with the same partner, she knew. Trust was thin, suspicion ran thicker. The patrol had been hit barely 3 kilometers out, ambushed the same way her team had days earlier. Same tactics, same precision, and the same sick truth pulsing beneath the chaos. Someone here was feeding them. No one said the word aloud. Not yet, but it hung in every clipped sentence, every too-sharp glance. She checked her gear with hands that moved on instinct, though her stomach roiled. Her partner approached, rifle slung over one shoulder, expression unreadable. "You feel it too," he said quietly. She tightened a strap, kept her eyes down. "What?" The looks, the questions, they're circling. Her throat tightened. She hadn't told him what she carried, The photo, the promise, the weight of her brother's shadow. She hadn't told him that she feared silence less than judgment, that one wrong word could turn suspicion on her. She only said, "Let them circle." His eyes narrowed like he wanted to push further, but then the captain's voice cut sharp, ending the moment. "Mount up, move out." The convoy rolled under a thin slice of moon, shadows stretching across the dirt road. Engines growled low, tires chewing dust. She sat in the back again, rifle across her knees, senses sharp. Around her, the men muttered quietly, too subdued for the tension in their shoulders. Her partner sat across, arms folded, watching her in the shifting light. She wanted to look away but couldn't. He had a way of seeing too much. Finally, he leaned forward, voice pitched low. "You've been through this before, haven't you?" Her chest tightened. She turned her gaze to the dark horizon. "Why do you say that?" "The way you move, the way you knew what to do. It's not first instinct, it's memory." Her fingers tightened on the rifle. Memory, yes. The kind that lived in bone and scar. The kind that came from losing her brother, from standing at the edge of a grave with a folded flag in her hands, swearing she would never again be too late, too weak, too small. But she couldn't say that. Not here, not when silence was her only shield. Instead, she whispered, "Some things don't leave you." He didn't press, just sat back, eyes still on her. The convoy slowed near the ridge where the patrol had vanished. Lights cut low, engines rumbling to silence. They dismounted quickly, boots crunching gravel, weapons raised. The air smelled of dust and burnt metal, the faint char of something recent. The patrol's vehicle sat half-destroyed ahead, tires shredded, windshield shattered. Bullet holes pocked the frame. No bodies, no movement, just silence too heavy for comfort. The captain signaled, sending pairs to sweep. She and her partner moved left, hugging the rocks, eyes scanning every shadow. The night pressed in thick, swallowing sound. Her pulse thudded in her ears, each step an echo of memory. A faint sound snapped the silence, a scrape of stone against stone. She froze, raised her rifle, breath caught. Her partner mirrored her, eyes narrowing toward the ridge above. Shadows shifted, too many. "Contact," someone shouted. Gunfire erupted, lighting the night with muzzle flash. Bullets cracked against rock, sparks leaping. She ducked low, pressed to the stone, returned fire. The recoil slammed her shoulder, but she stayed steady, every shot measured. The fight was fast, sharp, brutal. Shouts cut the dark, men scrambling, dirt spraying as rounds tore the ground. Then screams again, a soldier down. Her chest seized. The memory slammed into her, the courtyard, the blood, the weight in her arms. She saw her brother's face, the folded flag. No, not again. She surged forward before thought could stop her, darting low through the storm of fire. Her partner cursed, covering her with bursts that lit the ridge. She slid beside the fallen soldier, breath ragged, hands already pulling him close. Heavy, so heavy, but she didn't hesitate. Her small hands found strength again. She dragged him, boots scraping, dirt burning her palms. Bullets cut the air, but she moved anyway, teeth gritted, muscles screaming. Her partner's voice roared behind her, "Move, I've got you." Step by step, she pulled the soldier to cover. Medics rushed in, pulling him from her grip, hands already slick with blood. She collapsed against the rock, chest heaving, ears ringing. The fight raged on, but her world narrowed to the sound of the soldier's breath, shallow and strained. Alive, still alive. Her partner crouched beside her, face hard, eyes burning. "You can't keep doing that." She swallowed, throat raw. "I won't leave them." His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Instead, he fired another burst into the ridge, muttering under his breath. She couldn't hear the words, but she caught the edge of it, something like awe, something like fear. When the fight finally broke, when the shadows melted back into silence, leaving bodies and blood in their wake, the team regrouped, dragging the wounded, carrying the weight of what they had barely survived. The captain's face was dark, lines etched deep. This was no accident. They knew we'd come, knew how we'd move. His gaze swept the group, hard, sharp, accusing. No one spoke, but she felt the weight of eyes sliding toward her. Quiet, subtle, enough to twist her stomach cold. Too small, too quiet, too different, easy to doubt, easy to blame. Her partner stepped closer, voice low at her ear. They'll start pointing fingers. She clenched her jaw, staring at the dirt, at the blood soaking into it. She had carried 2 men back from fire. She had bled with them, fought with them. But suspicion had its own gravity, and it was pulling toward her. Because there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. She froze. Not because of fear, not because of hesitation, but because the sound in the distance didn't belong there. It was faint, almost drowned by the storm that swept dust across the valley, but her ears caught it. A dragging noise, metal against stone, someone or something moving when everything should have been silent. Her hands tightened on the rifle, finger brushing the trigger. The others didn't hear it. They were too busy breathing hard, shifting under the weight of exhaustion. But she had learned to listen when no one else did. The little details, the whispers the world gave before it broke. She raised her hand to signal halt. A simple gesture, but it carried weight. The squad obeyed, though some rolled their eyes, too tired for another one of her pauses. She didn't explain. Couldn't. If she was wrong, they'd call her paranoid again. If she was right, they'd never question her instincts again. The dragging grew louder, then nothing, silence. That was worse. Her throat tightened. For a moment the night pressed too close. The darkness seemed to breathe. A memory slipped in her brother's face, dirt-streaked, mouth whispering something she never heard before the blast took him. She shoved it away. Not now. A shadow moved, low, stumbling, human. Her heart kicked. Was it one of theirs, left behind, or someone waiting to lure them in? She had seconds to decide. Her squad leader was whispering sharp questions, but she ignored them. She stepped forward instead, rifle raised, eyes locked. The figure collapsed. The sound of the body hitting earth was heavy, final. She ran, faster than she should have, against every protocol drilled into her. The others cursed under their breath but followed. It was a soldier, uniform scorched, blood dark and stiff. He wasn't dead, not yet. His lips trembled, trying to form words. She leaned closer, straining to hear. All she caught was a single phrase, "Trap due." The squad tensed, too late. From the cliffs above, the first shot cracked the night. Stone shattered inches from her head. The echo was merciless, bouncing between the canyon walls. Then came the roar, automatic fire tearing into the valley. The ambush had waited for the perfect moment. She didn't think. She grabbed the wounded soldier's vest, dragging him behind a slab of rock as rounds chewed through the dirt around her. The weight nearly crushed her shoulders. He was twice her size, dead weight in her arms. The voices screaming at her, "Move, leave him, save yourself," were drowned by something louder in her chest. A refusal. The squad scattered. Some fired back, others dove for cover. The air smelled of smoke and metal, the stench of fear. She pressed her body against the soldier's, shielding him with a frame too small for the task. But she didn't move. Couldn't. Her mind had locked on a single truth. No one else was going to save him. Her jaw clenched until it hurt. The firefight grew louder, closer, suffocating. She wanted to shut her eyes. Instead, she whispered, not to him, not to anyone, but to herself. "You are not letting go." The moment stretched, and in that stretch she realized something that made her chest hollow. The others weren't coming for him, not because they were cruel, but because they had already decided one more life weighed against many. The math didn't favor the broken man in her arms. But her math was different. Every scream, every echo of loss that had carved her into who she was, all of it pointed here, to this choice. She would carry him through the fire, through the weight of every doubt. The storm above seemed to agree, lightning tearing the sky in jagged silence before thunder shook the ground. The valley became chaos, but in her heart there was only one line, a promise she didn't speak aloud. She tightened her grip and began to move. Not away from the fire, through it. Because sometimes dignity doesn't wait for approval, it simply acts. Her boots slipped in the mud, but she didn't stop. Every muscle in her body screamed, every tendon stretched thin under the weight she carried. The wounded soldier was heavier now, not because his body had grown, but because her strength was burning away. Step by step, she dragged him across ground that seemed determined to hold them down. The firefight raged behind her. Bullets carved sparks off stone, tracer rounds sliced the darkness. Her squad's voices bled through the chaos, shouts, orders, curses, but none of them reached for her. She was alone in this decision, alone in this burden. And still she moved. Her mind replayed words that had haunted her since training days. Too small, too slow, she'll never last. Those whispers had followed her through barracks, through drills, through every mission. Tonight they weren't whispers, they were weights pressing down on her lungs, and yet they only made her grip the soldier tighter. The man groaned, his eyes fluttered, she leaned close. "Stay with me," she whispered, not a command, a plea. Another burst of fire cracked from the ridge. She threw herself down, shielding him again with a body that should have been too fragile for the task. Dirt stung her face. Her ribs ached. She forced herself up, dragging him forward again. She thought of her brother, the way he had smiled even when he knew the odds, the way he had believed in her when no one else did. He hadn't made it home. Maybe she wouldn't either. But this soldier, this stranger, deserved that chance. Every sound was sharper now. The crunch of her boots, the rasp of his breath, the pounding of her own heart, a drumbeat that told her she was still alive, still moving. Behind her, someone shouted her name. Not in anger this time, in disbelief, maybe even respect. She didn't turn, couldn't. If she looked back, she might hesitate, and hesitation would kill them both. The valley narrowed, the fire grew heavier. She felt heat on her neck burning too close, too real. Her hand slipped on his vest, slick with blood and sweat. She adjusted, locked her arms tighter and pulled. Step, drag, breathe, step, drag, breathe. Her vision blurred at the edges, her legs trembled. The world seemed to tilt. She wanted to collapse, to let go, to rest just for a moment, but resting wasn't an option. Not here, not now. She bit down hard, tasting blood. "Not letting go," she whispered again, louder this time, as if saying it gave her strength. A shadow appeared ahead, cover, a broken wall half buried in the earth. Safety if she could just reach it. 10 more steps, that was all, 10 more. The gunfire didn't stop, the storm didn't stop. Her body wanted to stop. But she didn't. She dragged him those 10 steps, everyone feeling like a mile, until they collapsed behind the wall. The sudden silence felt unreal, like the world had gone deaf. She gasped, chest heaving, arms trembling so violently she thought they might snap. The soldier's breathing was shallow, but it was breathing. He was still alive, because she had refused to stop. Her eyes stung, not from the dust, not from the smoke, from something deeper, a release she hadn't allowed herself in years. For the first time that night, she let herself close her eyes. Just for a second, just long enough to feel the weight of what she had done. And in that second, a thought passed through her, quiet and sharp as a blade. They thought she was too small, but she had carried the weight of another life through fire. And that truth could never be taken away. The rain finally came. Not the storm of dust and fire that had haunted them all night, but real rain, cold, heavy, relentless. It poured over broken stone, over twisted metal, over the wounded soldier she had dragged through hell. For a moment it washed away the smoke, the blood, the weight of gunpowder that clung to her lungs. She sat there, back pressed against the ruined wall, the man's head resting in her lap. Her arms still shook, her shoulders burned, but she couldn't let go. Not yet. She listened to his breathing, each shallow rise and fall a fragile thread tying him to this world. The others reached them at last, boots splashing in mud, weapons lowered, eyes wide. None of them spoke at first. They just looked at her, at the impossible thing she had done, at the small soldier who had carried a man twice her size through fire and refused to leave him. Their silence was louder than any cheer. Finally, one of them knelt beside her, a medic, hands quick, voice steady. "You kept him alive," he said, not a question, a fact. She nodded, unable to find words. The squad leader stood a few feet away, watching, his face unreadable, shadowed by rain and regret. He had left the man behind. She had not. And in that gap something shifted between her and him, between what they thought she was and what she had proven to be. No one called her small now. No one dared. The night stretched on. The fight wasn't over. The enemy still lingered in the dark, waiting, watching. But something had changed within her. She wasn't just another soldier in the ranks. She had crossed a line, one that couldn't be undone. When the squad moved out again, she rose with them, exhausted, battered, trembling, but unbroken. The wounded man was carried on a stretcher now, his life no longer resting only in her hands. And yet she felt the weight of him still, not on her shoulders but in her heart. As they walked, she thought of her brother, thought of the promise she had never spoken aloud, thought of how he would have smiled to see her here, small in frame, but carrying more than anyone believed she could. The rain slowed. Dawn touched the horizon, faint and fragile, as if unsure it had the right to rise after such a night. She looked at it and felt something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time: hope. Because survival wasn't just about living through the fire. It was about carrying others through it too. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her actions had said everything. And when the story of that night was told, by those who had seen it, by those who would never forget, there would be no debate, no doubt, no dismissal. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.